Hi everyone and welcome back to Carla.
Well, now we have another hole in Carla, and this time in the hull. Now it's time to start closing up the hole again. But I was thinking, we don't know what the state of the stern pipe is. We'll have to take off the rudder to take out the propeller shaft to have a look inside the stern tube. And if we have to change the stern tube, we'll have to remove the concrete that's in behind this, and to do that we'll have to open up even more. And if we have to do that, well, it's not that smart to close up this hole. So I think the next logical step from here is to remove the rudder, remove the propeller shaft, and have a look at the stern tube. There's also a lot of things that we have to take apart in here, around the stern tube and the propeller shaft. That's not easy to get to if we put in the plates again. And also I want to remove some of the concrete that's just around the stern tube in here. And that's not easy to do if we put in the plates as well. So let's remove the rudder and remove the propeller shaft and have a look. Well, it's finally time to remove the rudder. I took some old pallets. I found some old pallets. I stacked them up so that hopefully I can make a controlled fall with the rudder onto the pallets, and we'll keep it in a certain height instead of just dropping it on the ground, of course. I guess we could have welded up some pad eyes and used the winches and controlled it all the way down, but we'll have to get the welder here, and it's going to take a lot of time. So we'll do a controlled fall. Maybe I'll just lay it down. Depends how heavy it is. And yeah, hopefully we can get it loose. I don't know when the rudder has last been off. It might be stuck, but let's give it a go.
Our rudder is built from 10mm steel, and as you can see it is secured to the boat with 12 bolts, both at the top and the bottom, which makes the entire construction incredibly strong. From the beginning, when Claus and I first started talking seriously about going sailing around the world, we knew that we wanted something that was really strong and durable, and for us that means a steel boat with a long keel. Well, maybe Claus is the one with the strongest opinions about that, but for the long journeys we're planning, durability is a top priority, and in our minds nothing beats steel. So here we got lucky with Carla. As you can probably imagine, working with steel comes with its own set of challenges. It's both heavy and it's hard to handle, and since Claus is doing most of the work on his own while I'm at work, he has had to get pretty creative along the way. The upside? Well, he definitely doesn't need a membership to the gym. This project gives him all the workout he could ever ask for. And sometimes it's not even the hard work that's giving him the problems. Sometimes it's the equipment.
Well, now it's the exciting part. I only have 2 bolts left in the bottom. They are unscrewed, they're just in the holes, and the same in the top. I need to remove one nut and then it's loose. So yeah, cross your fingers, hope for the best.
Claus was both excited and a little nervous about the rudder. He had no idea how much it weighed and kept wondering whether he would be able to control it, if it might tip over or even worse, fall over on him. So yes, it was definitely one of those hold your breath moments. What do you guys think? Should Claus have waited for me to get home before he started wrestling with a giant steel rudder solo, or was his "I've got this" confidence totally justified? Let us know in the comments. We're taking bets on how close it came to landing on his toes. If this kind of chaos speaks to you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share the madness with all of your friends. And if you want early ad-free access to future close calls, consider joining our crew on Patreon.
Well, that went alright. It's definitely heavy. Not heavier than it is manageable, but it's too heavy for me to lift. I think we'll get the tractor and the wagon and we'll drive it away. I don't really know where to put it. We'll see about that. But let's move it and get to the propeller shaft.
One of the best things that we have done so far is turning the old shed into our new workshop. It took some time and effort, but now we're finally able to have a proper space to store tools, parts, and most importantly, the massive rudder that we just removed. And in even better news, Claus managed to lift the rudder and get it inside the workshop without me, just barely, so we're calling it a win. If you're curious how we transformed the old shed, make sure to go back and check out some of our earlier videos. There's a whole playlist called Workshop where you can see the entire process from start to finish. It's wild to look back and see how far we've come. And we're just getting started. Now he could move on to removing the prop shaft and taking a look at the stern pipe. But to do that, some things needed to be taken apart.
Well, we're back inside the boat and now we have to turn our attention to the propeller shaft. As you can see, it's mounted up against the gearbox right here. I think we can take this apart and then bring it away from the gearbox. Pull the shaft out that way. But to get to all of this, we'll have to remove the exhaust system first. We'll just take it out of the bins. We can always put it back on to the engine if you want to start it. But for now, let's remove it so we can get to the propeller shaft.
After removing the rest of the exhaust system, Claus moved on to the next challenge, testing whether he could loosen the bolts connecting the clutch to the flange on the gearbox. After all, it has been quite a while since it was taken apart last time, if it ever has since being installed. At this point, he's just seeing if it's doable with the tools that we have, or if it's going to turn into one of those jobs that needs something a bit more creative. Fingers crossed, it doesn't turn into a full-day mission. Here we've got the shield shaft, also known as the stuffing box, at least according to Google. This little component plays a big role. It's what keeps water from flooding into the boat while the prop shaft is spinning. So it's definitely one of those parts you want to be in top condition before heading out on the water. Now, we're not entirely sure how everything fits together here, but Claus has a rough idea. He suspects that the metal ring is threaded and just needs a bit of persuasion to move. So once again, it's time for the hammer. It's been sitting untouched for 30 years, maybe even 40, so it's no surprise it's reluctant to budge. As you can see, once the seal comes off, there's quite a bit of corrosion inside. And it's pretty clear the shaft has been hanging slightly off center. That kind of wear doesn't happen overnight, so it's safe to say that this area has been needing some attention for quite a while. Definitely a good call to dig into it now before it turns into something much worse. Have you ever found a hidden issue like this while working on a boat or any project really? Let us know in the comments. We would really love to hear your stories.
Well, let's have a small update. As you've seen so far, I've unscrewed this one, so it actually comes off the gearbox now. I wanted to do that to be sure that we didn't have any bolts or screws from the back of it that held it together. And we don't, so I put this one back in, so we keep it into the gearbox, and the gearbox will and the engine will help us keep it still while I'm working on these screws, because these are rusted in place. I suspect, I don't know if you can see, but you have a hole over here, have a hole in there. I suspect we have to take out all these screws and then put 3 into these holes, and then when screwing those into the hole, this will come loose. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, but I can't get these loose, so I'll have to try some heat. I'll have to go get a small burner, and we'll see if we can heat them up and maybe get them moving. I did
get this one moving, just made it go click. So there's a chance. Otherwise, if we can't, well, I don't know, we'll have to cut it up or something and find something new, but I want to use this again. So let's see if we can get these loose, but for that we'll need some heat. Now the seal is a whole other story. This seal is definitely dead. I'm not sure exactly how this, I think maybe this was aligning it onto, and this was the seal with the clamps going onto it. I don't know really what this is. Maybe this is the correct way it was held together, but I don't like these steel bands holding together something this crucial. But never mind, we're going to change it, but I'm a bit afraid how the axle is going to look when we take it out, because this doesn't look good. This is a loose pipe for some reason. It's connected from over there and all the way over here. I bet it's because there were more room to work on it over here than in there, but still. And this has been lying on top of the axle. Of course, it has been held up so it didn't touch, but still. And this in here, you can see it's all, well, wonky shaped now. It has been rubbing against the axle. So yeah.
Every time we open up something, we get new jobs. But well, we knew we had to do something about this. We just didn't know how it looked. Now we know. But it's still exciting to get the axle out and see how that looks all in all. But yeah, well, I'll have to go to the hardware store, get me a small burner, and we'll see if we can heat up the small nuts, bolts over here, and get it off. Well, I was at the hardware store. I found a small burner. Now we'll see if we can heat the bolts and maybe get them loose. And incidentally, I found a family as well. So, yeah.
Hi.
Hopefully I get to keep them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a go.
Don't burn yourself.
Nope. Oi.
Something
I think.
hit me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's turning.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite corroded, but it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
But these are very easy. Very easy to destroy. And if we just destroy these,
we're never getting it off.
we'll have to try to weld something onto them or something to get a hold of them.
Now, you'll often see Claus using heat to loosen up old stubborn bolts. But why does that actually work? When you apply heat to a metal bolt, it causes the metal to expand. Even though it might not look like much, that tiny bit of expansion can break the bond that is formed between the threads, especially if they're rusted or seized. The heat also helps to soften up any old thread-locking compounds, grime, or corrosion that might be acting like glue.
Okay, we got all the bolts off, or the bolts out, as you can see. And now I suspect that the holes in between where the bolts were, Now I suspect that the holes that are in between the holes where the bolts were, I don't know if you can see it, yeah, they're threaded. So if we push, or if we drive one of the bolts in there, and one here and one there, there are 3
extra holes. I'm pretty sure that we're going to drive this whole ring out from in here, and then this will loosen up. I've seen it before, and I suspect very much that that is the deal. So the holes that we're going to drive these into hasn't had anything in them for many years, and they're probably filled with rust and dirt and stuff like that. So I took one of the bolts I just pulled out, and I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, I used the grinder and I made 2 slits into it. I know somewhere I have a thread cutting bit, but I can't find them. I can't find them for the life of me. So I made one myself. This should do it. So now we'll try to clean out the threads with this one, and if all goes well, we'll drive 3 other ones in there and see if we can take it apart. I also cleaned up the bolts we're going to use. I would like to have some new bolts, but well, I don't. So we'll try with these. Hopefully we won't break them. If we break them, yeah, we won't talk about that. Hopefully we won't break them. So here goes. Well, it wasn't too bad. There was some dirt in there, but yeah, not too bad. On to the next one.
All in all, it took well over an hour of screwing and unscrewing the bolts just to clean out the threads. And let me tell you, it wasn't exactly the most comfortable working position. Klaus's fingers were really feeling it by the end. To make things harder, he didn't quite have the perfect tools for the job, so he had to work in a really tight space. But with a bit of oil, a lot of patience, and some good old-fashioned determination, he managed to finally get it done.
Okay, so now we've cleaned out the threads and I put in the 3 bolts that we're going to use to push this one out from the block. I also disconnected it from the gearbox because we're going to use the hammer on it. I'm going to heat it and I'm going to bang it with a hammer, so I don't want to shock anything, the bearings or anything in the gearbox. I want to have it disconnected, and again I don't know exactly how this is going to come apart on this side as well, so I don't want it to be stopped from coming apart by being connected to the gearbox. So let's try it like this. I have put some tension on these bolts. Now I'm going to heat up this outer block, and Yeah, well, we'll take it from there.
Let's see how it goes.
Now, the next challenge is getting the parts to release their grip so that we can finally take everything apart. To do that, we're back to using heat, hoping it'll help loosen up the big chunk of metal clamped tightly around the prop shaft. The idea is simple. The heat expands the metal just enough to break the bond, and when that's combined with some well-placed hammer taps to induce vibration, we're hoping that it will all start to come free. Tightening the bolts adds even more pressure, helping to push the pieces or the locking rings apart. So between the heat, the hammer, and some bolt action, we've got a good shot at getting that lump of metal to finally let go. Well, it definitely took a fair bit of hammering, heating, and quite a bit of persuasion, both mechanical and maybe even a little verbal. But eventually everything started to give way. The metal was stubborn, probably not touched for decades, and clearly didn't want to let go without a fight. Claus had to go back and forth, alternating between carefully tightening the bolts to apply pressure, then heating up the outer ring to encourage it to expand, and giving it just the right amount of impact with the hammer to shake things loose. It's one of those jobs that takes a surprising amount of patience, not just brute force, but a kind of mechanical intuition. And in the end, persistence paid off. Slowly but surely, he could feel things starting to loosen up. Have you ever had a job like this, where everything was stuck and took way longer than expected, but finally gave in with a bit of clever thinking and stubbornness? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your worst stuck bolt or impossibly seized part story.
Okay, I'll just go pull the propeller a little bit, see if I can get it to move backwards.
As they say, if it was easy, it would have already been done. And this was definitely one of those moments where experience, patience, and a bit of old school problem solving made the difference. Now we're finally here at the satisfying moment when the part finally gets separated. After all that effort, it's almost like a little victory. Unfortunately, it also happens just as the camera decided to take a break. Now we don't know what happened. It was just one of those days, I guess. So you'll have to take our word for it. So instead, we move outside and start removing the prop shaft. Not knowing exactly how heavy it might be or how much force it could release when he got it loose, he plays it safe and ties a rope around it first. Smart move, because the last thing you want is to get knocked over by a chunk of metal with a mind of its own. Now for the next problem. Is Claus even going to be able to lift the prop shaft by himself? It really is hard to determine how heavy something is by just looking at it. The only way to know for sure is just to try and lift it. And once again, he proves me and himself wrong for doubting his strength, and Claus was strong enough to lift it out and set it down safely. So here it is, the prop shaft, finally out. But now comes the big question. What do we do with it? Do we restore it or do we replace it entirely? Honestly, we're on the fence. That's why we'd really love to hear what you think. Let us know in the comments. We're genuinely looking for some input here because we're second guessing ourselves at this point. If you take a closer look, it seems like this shaft has had some work done before. You can spot a few lines along the length that look like old welds, probably done so it could be clamped into a lathe and straightened out at some point. And on the end, where the stuffing box was mounted, there's clear evidence of wear, enough that the shaft is visibly thinner in that section. On top of that, there are other areas where the metal shows sign of long-term wear and corrosion. So what would you do? Would you go through the process of repairing and remachining this old prop shaft, or would you bite the bullet and replace it altogether? We're leaning towards keeping it if we can, both to save on cost and because we want to reuse as much original material as possible in this rebuild. And then there's the stern tube. That's a whole other dilemma in itself. First of all, there's this extra piece of pipe that was added on at some point, most likely to extend the stern tube a little bit, so the stuffing box could be mounted further inside the boat closer to the engine. The idea was probably to make the connection more accessible for maintenance. Claus removes that extension so that we can get a proper look at the actual stern pipe underneath. It's always interesting to uncover these kinds of modifications. Some make perfect sense, while others leave you scratching your head. But in this case, it seems like a practical solution for easier access. Originally, there was a kind of bracket or holder that kept the stern pipe in place before the concrete was poured in. But now that bracket seems obsolete. It's done its job and it doesn't really serve a purpose anymore. Or at least that's our opinion. Which brings us to the next question. What do we do about the concrete itself? Should we remove it completely and redo everything from scratch? Or is what we have good enough to keep and work around? So, yeah, as you can tell, we're not 100% sure what the next step is. That's where you come in. Your suggestions and feedback have given us great ideas in the past. So please don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments, whether it's about the prop shaft, the stern tube, or the concrete. Should we replace it all, or is it worth saving what we have? Well, I think that might be as many questions as we can handle for now. So we'll wrap it up here. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, we really appreciate your support and input. So, see you next time when we dive into the next exciting project.